the reconvened meeting of the Derry City and Strabane District Council Planning Committee. You may well have noticed that I had a touch of laryngitis yesterday. It's actually got worse today. So I'm going to battle on with it if I can. In the event that my voice goes completely, then I will ask the Deputy Chair. Or if anybody has a problem understanding me, then of course we can do it quicker. So sorry about this. But I suppose in one sense, I'll not be talking an awful lot either. So, and on that note, can I also encourage members to not talk an awful lot today, because we have an awful lot of applications to get through. So please keep your remarks as tight as you can. And again, the questions that we're asking, if we could do that too. So let's get going. Just to welcome everybody online to the meeting as well. This is the last official meeting of the Planning Committee in this mandate. So before we do start, can I just thank all of the officers for their work over the last 4 years, and indeed the members of the Planning Committee who have sat on the Planning Committee over the last 4 years as well, and also to thank the two previous chairmen over the last 4 years, Councillor Jackson and Councillor McKinney, and the vice chairs that served underneath them as well, for their work in bringing us through to this particular stage. So, members, it's the notice and summons a meeting and the attendance and apologies first. Maura.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you're hereby summoned to attend the reconvened Special Planning Committee, which will be a hybrid meeting to be conducted remotely via WebEx, also physically in the Chamber in Guildhall, Tuesday the 28th of March 2023 at 2 p.m. Alderman Alan Breslin.
Apologies for Alan.
Okay, thanks. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Alderman Drew Thompson.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr.
Should be with us shortly, Chair. He's just not late.
Okay. Councillor Raymond Barr. No. Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Angela Dobbins. Apologies.
No, Maura, I'm here.
Oh, you're
online.
on?
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I thought you sent me apologies earlier.
No, you didn't read it right.
Right. Okay, thanks. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
I'm sure. Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly.
I'm sure, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Patricia Logue. Thank you. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Thank you. Councillor Philip McKinney.
Here.
And Councillor Sean Minry. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. Okay, members, moving on to the next item on the agenda, the broadcast statement. To save my voice, I've asked Eamon Malloy to read it out on my behalf today, if you don't mind, members.
Thanks, Chair. This is the broadcast statement for hybrid meetings. I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall today or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use of storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council's privacy notice may be found on the Council's website at www.derrystrabane.com.
Thank you, Eamon. Okay, members. Any further declarations of interest in relation to today's business? Of course, you can do that through the course of the meeting if you feel it appropriate as well. Okay, members, chairperson's business, there's a couple of matters that I think we would want to attend to first. I'm going to ask Maura to talk us through the late items that are left, and then the City Solicitor wants to address us on a matter that we dealt with yesterday. So, Maura, we'll go with you first.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you'll recall we ran through each of the late items as we came to each of the applications relevant. There's only a number of late items remaining, so we thought we would highlight those at the start of the meeting and take the time at the beginning. So just to recall, in terms of moving forward, the next application, which is item 8 on the agenda. Sorry, it's not on the running order, but in terms of consecutive late items, number 8, we had an application for the Factory Girls. The response from NIA is in your late pack, and we'll come to that in due course. Number 10, the application item number 10. There's 3 pieces of information in regards to that application, but that application, as you recall, was deferred. So we've put that back, but you will see from previously what information was there. Item number 13, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of information. We have an email from Enoch Youth Forum, which is the 21st of March, an email from Abrona Wade on the 21st of March, an email from Paul Hughes on the 21st of March, an email from Eamon O'Donnell on the 21st of March, and a further email from Councillor Rachel Ferguson on the 26th of March. Also, in terms of your late items, we have under item 16, and that's dwelling at Brocka Road. We have an email from Councillor Declan Norris, and that was the 22nd of March. And we have an email from Lee Kennedy with letters of support for the 24th of March. In terms of the last late item you'll have just received today, it's relating to item number 17 on the agenda. And the information is from the agent, Mark McGyver, in support of the application. So hopefully, Chair, that will cover all our remaining late items for today. Thanks.
Thank you, Maura. I'll just give you the running order again, folks, as it stands now. So today's running order will be numbers 11, 12, 13, 16, 17, 8, 9, 14, and 15. You all get that okay, yeah? 11, 12, 13, 16, 17, 18, 9, 14, 15. Okay. So, as I referenced, City Solicitor wants to discuss a matter that we dealt with yesterday, just to clear a few things up. And there's a bit of thinking about it overnight. So, Philip, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, this is in relation to application LA 11 2020 04860, which is the filling station application at Drumahoe. You recall, members, that there was an issue in relation to the HRA and its appearance on the planning portal. And it was agreed that we would defer issuing the decision notice and therefore making the final decision in relation to the matter for a period of 4 weeks to allow any representations to be made in relation to that HRA by members of the public. Having considered the matter and reflected on this overnight, whilst we had agreed that the matter would come back before the committee in the event that there were any material representations, having discussed it with the applicant, we're in agreement that it would be preferable if, regardless of what responses received, if any, in relation to the publication of the HRA on the planning portal, the matter should come back before this committee in June. So I'm just seeking members' consent that matter should come back before this committee in June for further consideration.
Happy enough with that? Yeah. Grand job. Okay, thank you. Right. So, members, in the interests of getting us through the business as quickly as we can today, I think we'll take 10 minutes now at the start of the meeting for people to refamiliarise themselves with the late items. So if you just want to say, take 10 minutes, maybe about 20 past 2 or so, we'll come back to it and we'll get to the first application. Okay, thanks. Okay, members. If everybody's ready to move on, so, okay. Right, the next application is LA 11 2022 04940, and Laura's going to take us through that. So whenever you're ready, Laura.
Good afternoon, members. Item 11 on the agenda is LA 11 2022 0494, and the applications for the erection of a dwelling and a garage on
Laura,
farm.
could you move your microphone right closer to you? Thank you.
Sorry.
We're struggling to hear.
So the applications for the erection of a dwelling and garage on a farm, and the site is 160 metres west of number 58 Legford Road, Plumbridge, and the recommendation is to refuse. So the application site here, it can be seen on the site location plan, and the aerial photo as defined by the red line is part of an agricultural field located on the northern side of Legford Road. So this is an image of the application site from the roadside. As you can see, it slopes upwards in a northerly direction from the road. This is just another image of the application site. So the site's located within the Sperrins area of outstanding natural beauty, and just the development in the area is characterised by single dwellings and small farm groups. So this slide just outlines the policy context under which the application was assessed, including the Strabane Area Plan, the SPPS, PPS 21, PPS 2, PPS 3, PPS 15, and then the design guide. So in terms of consultation responses, there were no objections to the proposal, and conditions were proposed from some of the consultees alongside some advice, and these are covered in detail in the planning report. There are also been 3 letters of objection received from 2 properties on Legford Road. Again, these are covered in detail in the planning report. There's a number of issues raised, all of which have been considered. So in terms of the principle of this proposal, it's assessed under policy CTY 10 as the application is for a farm dwelling. Under Part A of policy CTY 10, officers are content that the farm business is active and has been established for at least 6 years. Consultation with DERA and additional evidence has been provided from the applicant and agent to demonstrate this. In terms of Part B, officers are content that no dwellings or development opportunities have been sold off from the farm holding within the last 10 years. And this drawing just indicates there was 2 planning approvals previously in relation to this farm business. One was sold off over 10 years ago, and the other one hasn't been sold off the holding. However, in terms of Part C of policy CTY 10, its officers' opinions, the building is not visually linked or sited to cluster with an established group of buildings on the farm. So this image shows the application site and the applicant's building on the farm. As you can see there, there's a distance of 420 metres between the application site and the building. This image here on the left just shows the building, which is currently the only farm building on the farm. It's a small outbuilding, as you can see. So therefore, we don't consider that the application site or a dwelling on that site will be visually linked or sited to cluster with a group of buildings on the farm. As you can see in this image, the application site will sit behind the roadside vegetation and won't be visible. And the applicant's farm building is also difficult to see there in the distance. There are some other buildings adjacent to that farm building, but these are not on the applicant's farm, and therefore can't be considered to be a group of buildings on the farm for the purposes of policy CTY 10. And therefore the building will not cluster or visually link with this building. Just so whilst I suppose we don't consider this to be acceptable in principle, we also assess the proposal under all our planning criteria. just there in terms of policy CTY 13 and 14 of PPS 21 and policy NH6 of PPS 2, just with the site bin and the AOMB, we would be content that there will be a suitable degree of integration on the site for a modest single-storey dwelling of traditional design, particularly because of the site being located within the AOMB. And we're content that the development won't create urban development or result in a suburban style build-up of development. In terms of amenity, there have been no issues raised. There's sufficient separation distance between the site and any other properties. That can also be considered in detail at reserved matter stage if approval is granted. In terms of natural heritage, PPS2, SAS and NIA have been consulted and they're content that there be no adverse impacts on any designated sites subject to conditions. In terms of site access and parking, development will upgrade the existing agricultural access and DFI roads have no objections, subject to submission of plans at reserved matter stage if approval is granted. Just to summarise, we consider that the proposal is contrary to policy CTY10 and that the proposed dwelling won't be sited to visually link or cluster with an established group of buildings on the farm, and it is therefore contrary to Part C of policy CTY10, and for that reason refusal is recommended. And the slide just highlights the refusal reasons which are outlined in the planning report. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, there's one speaker to address the committee here. We have Una Given, the agent on behalf of the applicant. Una, I hope you're online.
Yes, I'm good to go.
Okay, Una, thank you very much. So Una, normal protocol here would be you'll have 5 minutes to speak to the committee, and then I'll put it over to them to ask you any questions that they might have. Okay, so whenever you're ready to go, Una, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you and thanks to the planning team for allowing me the opportunity to be heard by the committee. I am the agent for the applicant, Mr. Brian Quinn. Mr. Quinn seeks planning permission for a dwelling on his farm. The planning team have confirmed that the land is being actively farmed by Mr. Quinn for the requisite 6-year period. So as the farm is active and established, then there is no requirement that the applicant demonstrate that the proposal is essential, as suggested by reason for refusal 1. And it would seem that the planning team's only concerns are whether the proposed dwelling would visually link with a building on the farm and whether there are a group of buildings. Mr. Quinn's farm comprises of 33 hectares on the northern side of the Lickford Road. At the centre of the farm, set back from the road, is a farm shed which is owned and operated by Mr. Quinn as part of his operations. Next to this shed are a couple of similar buildings which were once part of the same holding, but they're not anymore. I consider that the proposed dwelling will be visually linked with his shed and the neighbouring buildings because they would be all intervisible when viewed on approach from the east. The case officer has disputed that assertion and has said that the proposed dwelling will not be visible in that view because of roadside vegetation. Now, whilst the roadside vegetation will certainly help to screen the dwelling, it would not render it invisible entirely, and so the proposed house will be visible along with the existing shed in the background. In my evidence, I had referred to similar approvals. One was a permission also on the Lickford Road in which there was less visual linkage. The case officer refers to it in her written report, and she said that the planning committee at that time considered that visual linkage could be achieved. So I don't see why this application should be treated differently. The other example I'd given was an appeal decision in which a farm dwelling was allowed a short distance away from the group, similar to this case, and was also on the other side of the road, whereas in this case, the proposed house is on the same side of the road as the farm building and group. In terms of the requirement to visually link with a group of buildings on the farm, the applicant's shed is beside an established group of buildings. Whilst those buildings are not owned by the applicant, they nevertheless form a group with the applicant's farm building, and their presence in the environment is still a material consideration. In selecting the most suitable site, we have had regard to the attributes of the landscape, in particular its position in the Sperrins AOMB. It's apparent from the case officer's written report that the site is excellent in terms of its capacity to integrate a dwelling into the landscape and that there will be no harm to visual amenity or rural character. In that respect, I would say that the proposal is fully in accordance with one of the aims of PPS 21, which is to protect the countryside from inappropriate development while supporting rural communities. The whole point of a farm dwelling visually linking with a group of buildings is in order to help minimise the impact of the new house in the landscape. And I believe we have achieved that, as a dwelling on the proposed site will be sympathetic to the landscape. Had we have chosen a site right beside the existing farm shed and the neighbouring buildings, it would have resulted in a more prominent development with a convoluted access and would have had a greater impact on the landscape than the proposed site. There are some objections to the development. However, the site is sufficiently far away from those addresses so as not to cause any harm to existing residential amenity. And in any case, the case officer has accounted for those objections in detail in her report. In summary, it is considered that planning permission may be granted as number one, the farm is active and established. Number two, the site is intervisible with a building on the farm that forms a group with other buildings. And given the capacity of the site to integrate a dwelling and cause no harm to rural character, the proposal is within the spirit of policy CTY 10 Part C. Ladies and gentlemen, that completes my presentation. Thanks very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Una. Members, any questions for this afternoon? Councillor Kerrigan. Oh, sorry, Alderman Kerrigan.
You're all right, Chair. Just very briefly there, you're making reference there. This farm isn't being, on paper, it's being farmed by the applicant, and it's letting Conacher. This shade here, is the shade part of a letting process, or is this, the local building here, it's just an all-out building? Is there any agricultural use in it? And then, following that, I do see comments passed by the objectors there in regard to the fencing, or lack of fencing there, but I note on the documentation there, it's the Conacher agreement that the owner of the land is meant to be responsible as part of their active farming status, that they're responsible for the fencing. So just a few comments on that. Thank you.
Go ahead, Una.
Thank you, Councillor. The shed in question is owned and operated by the applicant. It's used in conjunction with his farming activities, not the persons who he lets the land out to. The shed is used as a store. He would have fencing materials kept in the shed, like some posts and wire for fencing. And he does take responsibility for maintaining the lands. And we provided quite a lot of documentation to that effect, which the planners have reviewed and have come to the view that Mr. Quinn is engaged in active farming on the land. I hope that answers the question. If I haven't got it right, certainly come back to me.
Yep. Alderman Kerrigan has indicated that answers his question. Any other questions, members? Okay, Una, sit tight. No more questions. Any questions for the officers on the floor? Okay, members. Well, you have it in front of you. This application has been recommended for refusal. So I'll take any proposals now. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Kelly, go ahead.
I hope you can hear me. Thanks for the officer and to the speaker for the information on this. I've read the report, and in fact, I find it a very straightforward application to assess in my own head because, as has been outlined, this meets all aspects of criteria, of policy criteria, apart from a single aspect in CTY 10 Part C. And I do thank the officer for including in the report the fact at page 294 the exception that applies at CTY 10 Part C can't be employed in this particular case because there are no other existing groups of buildings on the farm. So for that reason, Chair, I'm going to deploy the area plan, and I think it's a very straightforward one. The power afforded us in the area plan to set aside any unduly restrictive policies, and I'm thinking in relation to the area of outstanding natural beauty policy at 120.3 of the area plan, and I'm just going to read it into the record. It is important to note that much of the AOMB lies above the 200-metre contour, and that within that higher area little or no development pressure exists. This relatively remote part of the district suffers from a number of socio-economic problems associated with rural depopulation, which an unduly restrictive policy would serve to exacerbate. And also, again, the same policy in terms of the rural remainder policy, the same wording practically at 123.2.1 of the area plan. I do regard that in terms of those other policy requirements, both within the area plan and within the SPPS and within the policies, are all met. So I'm going to suggest that we don't accept the officer recommendation, and because there are no groups of buildings to cluster a house with on this particular farm, so to refuse it would be unduly restrictive. To try and meet that requirement, so I'm going to ask members to consider setting aside that policy requirement in this case, and that we approve the House.
We have a seconder from Councillor Maguire. So proposal to not accept the recommendation. Refuse members proposed by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Maguire. I'm going to ask Maura to put that to the vote.
Any conditions?
Would you like to outline that? Yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
Yep, just members mindful on page 294, officers have assessed the integration capacity of the site under CTY 13 as well, and would be recommending that a modest dwelling, single story or something with a low ridge height would be appropriate to ensure its dwellings visually indicated. So if members wanted to consider conditions if they were required, they could advise officers. Thanks.
So Kelly, as the proposer, are you content with that condition?
Sure, I am content with that. I think if you look at figures 11 and 12 in the report, you can see from the Tullahiren Road that a modest house along that road would be easily accommodated. It would nestle just in against that hillscape. So I'm content with the conditions, standard conditions apply.
Okay, noted, Councillor Kelly. Okay, members, Maura, if you'd like to put that to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is item 11, and the proposal is not to accept the officer's recommendation. Alderman Alan Breslin. Apologies earlier. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
For Maura.
Thank you. Alderman Drew Thompson.
Or Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr.
Yep, apologies, I was late. I'll abstain on this.
Okay. Councillor Raymond Barr. Still not here. Councillor John Boyle. Okay. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
For Maura.
Okay. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
Or.
Okay. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Or
Okay. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Or.
Okay. Councillor Patricia Logue. Thanks. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Thanks. Councillor Fulton McKinney.
Or.
Thanks. And Councillor Sean Mooney. Okay. It's unanimous.
That's unanimous, members. Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Una, for coming along today. We'll move on to the next one. On our that's item number 12, LA 11 2022 0963/O. And again, Laura's going to present that one as well. Go ahead, Laura.
So item 12, LA 11 2022 0963 is an application for a gap site for a dwelling immediately adjacent and 40 metres north of 7 Ballyur Road, Castledairg, and the recommendation is to refuse. So as can be seen here on the site location plan in the aerial image, the application site is located on the eastern side of Ballyur Road. The field falls away gently from the roadside in a north-easterly direction. The roadside and northern side boundaries are defined by a ditch, post and wire fence, and a low hawthorn hedgerow and one small tree. Ballyur Road is a minor dead-end road which only currently serves 3 dwellings. To the south is an existing story and a half roadside dwelling, number 7, which is a small site curtilage. This slide outlines the policy context, the Regional Development Strategy, Strabane Area Plan, the SPPS, PPS 21, PPS 2, PPS 3 and PPS 15, and the supplementary guidance. In terms of consultation responses, none of the consultees had any objections to the proposal and provided standard advice and conditions. There was no letters of objection or support received in relation to this application. So in terms of the principle of this proposal, this application is assessed under policy CTY 8 ribbon development. So policy CTY 8 states the plan permission will be refused for a building which creates or adds to a ribbon of development. In such circumstances, the policy does permit an exception to the development of a small gap site sufficient only to accommodate up to a maximum of 2 houses within an otherwise substantial and continuously built up frontage. And the policy defines this as a line of 3 or more buildings along a road frontage without accompanying development to the rear. So in terms of Ballyur Road and the application site, the existing pattern of development on the eastern side of Ballyur Road is for 2 established dwellings which are separated from each other by 2 fields and an agricultural laneway, which you can see here, which runs adjacent to the application site. Both dwellings have small plot sizes front onto the road. Number 9 up here to the north has some outbuildings, but these are set to the side and the rear of the dwelling and they're not clearly visible from the road. So there are only 2 dwellings at this location, therefore this isn't considered to be a continuous and substantially built up frontage, which is defined by policy CTY 8. In terms of the topography, the road alignment, the vegetation in the agricultural fields and the laneway provide a significant gap and a visual break of over 70 metres between the 2 existing dwellings. The 70-metre gap currently maintains rural character and provides visual relief between these 2 dwellings, a significant visual break whenever you're travelling in either direction. Therefore, it's considered that a dwelling in this site isn't an exception to policy CTY 8 and would, as a result, create a ribbon of development at this location, which would erode the rural character of the area, contrary to policy CTY 8. So, therefore, whilst the proposal isn't acceptable in principle, it's also considered under additional planning criteria. In terms of policy CTY 13, the views are localised over a short range, but the site doesn't benefit from any long established boundaries other than that small section of roadside hedge, which can be seen here and the images provided. It's considered that if a dwelling were to be constructed on the site, it would rely primarily on new landscaping. And therefore it's considered that the proposal is also contrary to policy CTY 13 of PPS 21 and that it wouldn't visually, a dwelling on the site wouldn't visually integrate into the surrounding landscape. In terms of CTY 14, it's linked with policy CTY 8 and therefore it's considered that a new dwelling on the site would create a suburban style build-up of development, which is detrimental to the rural character of the area. So therefore the proposal is also contrary to policy CTY 14 of PPS 21. In terms of amenity, which is considered in the SPPS, there are no matters regarding privacy, overlooking or overshadowing that are unlikely to be able to be dealt with at reserved matter stage if approval is granted. There is a wind turbine nearby, which may be audible at times, but any occupier could be advised of this potential disturbance. And in terms of CTY 16, the application form indicates that sewage should be disposed of by septic tanks, so therefore proposal complies with CTY 16. In terms of PPS 2 and PPS 15, SES have been consulted and they have no issues in terms of any European sites. They've been aware as a flood risk identified. Therefore, the proposal complies with these policies. In terms of PPS 3, access and parking, a new access will be provided onto Ballier Road, and DFI roads have provided advice in terms of visible displays, and are content that they can be provided on a plan should permission be granted. So in summary, the application site isn't regarded to be a small gap within a substantially and continuously built up frontage, which is required by policy CTY 8. And as such, it's considered that the proposal would result and create a ribbon of development which would adversely affect the rural character of this area. And additionally, the site lacks long-established natural boundaries and is unable to provide a suitable degree of enclosure for a new dwelling to integrate into the landscape, and refusal is recommended. This slide just highlights the refusal reasons. Members will note that in the report, refusal reason number 4 was omitted. That's just to do with the integration. It was discussed in the planning report, but I've put it here onto the slide just so that's available to view. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. And we have one speaker again, the agent on behalf of the applicant, David McKinley. David, I hope you're online there.
Yes, can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah, we can, David.
Perfect.
So, David, I'm sure you know by now the drill, David. So you've got 5 minutes and then we'll put questions to you if members wish to do so. So whenever you're ready to go, David, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay, thanks, Chair and Committee, for allowing me to speak on behalf of the applicant. A little bit disappointed. I was looking for a photograph of, I'd submitted quite a good detailed analysis of CTY 8 and why it met it, but it showed clearly and demonstrated clearly the both ends of the gap site. Again, we can get it on, I suppose, just if you leave it there, Laura, that'll do fine on that slide. Basically, CTY 1 will fall if the gap is accepted. CTY 14, this application won't create a ribbon if it's accepted as a gap. There is a hedgerow at the front, and we're moving approximately 15 metres out of a 40-metre frontage. We can and we will put in a new planting scheme at reserve matter stage, but bearing in mind this is a minor road with very little views into this site. It's about half a mile in the Ballymuir Road, and we're within 20 metres of the end of the Ballymuir Road. If you can look at the location plan, it shows number 10 is the farmyard, and it stops more or less at the corner of the blue line. So it's back to CTY 8. Like CTY 8, and I'll read as per the submission I put in quite a while ago. The proposal will satisfy the credentials with the presence of one dwelling building to the south, which is number 7. And number 7, actually, on my photographs, it showed that there's 2 gate entrances into number 7. One just right beside the red line, and the other one is as you drive in from the south to number 7. So the site fronts onto the Ballymuir Road, no issue. There's 2 accesses onto that, so that's the frontage is sorted. If we then go to the number 9 Ballymuir Road, which is the building to the north of our site, it actually has 3 buildings, not 2. And again, the document would show that just underneath the big tree at the entrance on the left-hand side as you drive into number 9, there's a strong stone building with a tin roof on it. That's 3 buildings on one side and 1 building on the other. So the criteria for CTY 8 has been met. A further requirement is similar and proposal to size, scale, siting, and plot size. Now, there was a note that I put in, a map with the as was called the scheme design map. And so the frontage, I established the frontage of number 9 as being 30 metres at number 9. Number 7, which is the house to the south, had a 32-metre frontage. And the frontage of our proposed site, which is in the red line, is a frontage of 40 metres. With the others, if there is a potential for another site between ours and number 9, that frontage would also be 40, but that would include the laneway, which to me is still frontage. Now, we're all aware of policy that it has to have a line of 3 or more buildings. It doesn't say that line can be staggered. It doesn't say it's parallel. It says 3 or more buildings. So I have indicated number 7 as being fronting onto the Ballinure Road where it needed to be. So that's 1, and then to the north we've got the 3 buildings. 1 is prominent. It's not invisible as noted by Planning Service. It is visible and quite clearly visible on the ground. So I've met full criteria here with the 3 buildings on one side at number 9 and 1 number building at number 7. Basically, that's me. It's just a shame I didn't have the other photographs up with part of the presentation, but it is what it is. I was surprised that this application, believe it or not, is in front of the committee. As I've said, we've clearly met, as I understand, the full criteria of CTY 8. That's me. I'm finished, and I'm quite happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Anybody got any questions for Mr. McKinley? Nobody in the chamber, anyway. Anybody online? Okay, David, sit tight.
Thank you.
Members, any questions for the officer team? Councillor Maguire.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, in Figure 1, the building that's referred to by Mr. McKinley, it's on the roadside at the rear of number 9. And, that's extremely important in this application. And I'm just wondering why it was omitted in the drawing there in Figure 1, because, it's an old house, stone with a tin roof. And, 3 or more buildings is in the policy. And having that 3rd building omitted when it's clearly on the roadside, it just turns the whole policy and the application on its head. So I think it's really important that should have been there. And I'm just wondering why it's omitted. Yeah.
Okay, anybody want to answer that?
I will. Figure 1 was submitted by the applicant. That's the location map. Okay. And then Figure 2 is the ortho of the site that we would include just for your information. And then Figure 3 is our own assessment of the frontage. Figure 4 is a further map, further information submitted from the agent, and Figure 5, and those were that's the information that he was referring to on the presentation there. So Figure 1 is from the applicant as well.
Well, explains that, but again, as I say, it turns the whole application on its head. When 3 buildings is in CTY 8, but I would like to make a proposal, Chair, but there may be other questions.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Maguire. Anybody else got any questions for the officers? Well,
yeah, so I suppose just to clarify, the assessment members and the fact that obviously there's more than one gap there. Okay, the site is only one part of a larger gap. And obviously the policy requires a maximum of 2, the infill of a maximum of 2 dwellings in a small gap. Officers would not be considering that site would represent a small gap between number 7 and number 9, irrespective of, the building to the rear is visually part of the substantially continually built up frontage or not. So just to clarify that, thanks.
thanks, Suzanne. No other questions, members? Okay, if you do, yeah, go ahead, Alderman Cooney.
Very briefly, given the size of the sites there, would that, in my mind there, that I know it's a field that's divided into 2 with a laneway down it, but is it not appropriate size of sites? would it not be effectively a gap for two sites, given the size of the other properties on that road and the road frontage to them?
Well, we're not looking at an application for two sites. We're looking at for one, and I'm not trying to be difficult or anything, but I think what we're looking at here is, yes, there's clearly roadside dwellings, there's no doubt about it. But the policy is quite strict, and if we go back to that Duff case that Philip knows the details of, the reference, where it makes very clearly that we assess the facts on the ground. That, that the steer there is to quite a strict interpretation of a substantially built up frontage, and that to me wouldn't meet the policy. That is more than a small gap.
Okay, no other questions. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chair. And again, given the size of number 9 Ballier Road as opposed to number 7, and given that the building in figure 4 is added, which is all part of that one site, I see the site in question as around the same size as a road frontage as number 9, and I see it as a site, and we're a gap site where in 2, 1 and 2, sorry. So given that, I believe it meets the criteria of CTY 8 that it is a gap site. It's one site and a gap which will accommodate up to two dwellings, and I believe that is it. I believe it meets CTY 8, and we also have the area plan as well, but I don't think we need it in this case. Where a less restrictive policy is needed in 123.2.1. But given that, what I said, I believe it meets CTY 8, and as was mentioned by the applicant, they can at full planning stage integrate the site to meet point number 4 for the refusal. So given that there, Chair, I'd like to propose we don't accept the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Maguire. We'll need a seconder for that, members. Seconded by Alderman Kerrigan. Okay, members, so the proposal is to overturn the recommendation to refuse. Proposed by Councillor Maguire, seconded by Alderman Kerrigan. Let's move to the vote.
Thank you, members. This is item 12, and the proposal is not to accept the officer's recommendation to refuse. Alderman Alan Breslin. Apologies. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Or Mara.
Alderman Drew Thompson.
Or Mara.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr.
Or.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr. Apologies. Councillor John Boyle.
Or.
Thank you. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
Or Mara.
Councillor Paul Gallagher.
Or Mara.
Okay. Councillor Christopher Jackson. Okay. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Or Mara.
Thanks. Councillor Patricia Logue. Okay. Kieran Maguire. Thanks. Councillor Philip McKinney.
Or.
Councillor Sean Mooney. Okay.
That's unanimous, members. Thank you. And again, David, thank you very much for coming along this afternoon. We'll move on with the rest of our business, if you don't mind. And our next application is LA 11 2022 0139/F. And that's number 13 on our list, members. And Sarah's going to take us through that. Go for it, Sarah.
Chair, item 13 is LA 11 2022 0139F. This is a development of 10 social housing units, community open space and ancillary development comprising of 4 semi-detached houses and 1 two-storey apartment block containing 6 apartments. The site is the former church building at Beechwood Park, Strathfoyle, and the recommendation is to approve. So this is a site location plan. The site is located within the development limits of Strathfoyle and situated on the site of a former church which was demolished. The site is bounded by public roads to the southern and eastern boundaries of the site. The northern boundary is adjacent to an existing housing development at Greenfield Park. The western boundary abuts existing open space, playing pitches and a playground area. The proposed site is accessed from Beechwood Park. The site contains a number of mature trees, 6 of which are protected by a tree preservation order. And the tree preservation order was confirmed on the site on the 3rd of August 2021. So this is just a spatial NI aerial photograph of the site. This is a view of the site from Clonmene Drive, a view of the site from the junction of Gortmore Place and Beechwood Park. This is a photograph of one of the TPO trees on the site in the southwest corner of the site, and trees that are located on the eastern part of the site. So this is the proposed site plan. The proposed layout is for 6 apartments and a 2-storey apartment building and 4 semi-detached dwellings, so there's 10 in total. The proposed apartment building fronts onto Beechwood Park and the 4 dwellings onto an area of existing open space. The 6 trees which are protected by the tree preservation order have been retained and carefully considered in this proposed layout. The layout has taken advantage of the area surrounding the TPO trees. In the eastern part of the site, an area of communal space is provided for use by all occupants of the development. The trees in the western part of the site are protected and an area of green space is provided which will connect and link to the existing open space and play areas outside of the application site. The apartments also have their own defensible private amenity space at ground floor level, and the dwellings have rear private amenity garden spaces which all meet the standards of creating places. 21 parking spaces are provided within the layout and the layout is considered acceptable. So this is the proposed apartment building. The apartment building is 2-storey in height and designed to replicate a terrace of 3 dwellings. These are finished in plaster with brick 2-storey front projections on the elevation and the roof will be slate. The apartments are all 2-bedroom and the size of the apartments measures between 66 metres squared to 74 metres squared, and this exceeds the guidance as set out in policy LC1. So this is the house type proposed on sites 7 and 8, with one of the dwellings being a corner dual frontage dwelling. And this is the dwellings on sites 9 and 10. One of them is a complex needs unit. The design of the dwellings is similar and has the same finishes as that of the apartments, with use of brick and render on the facades and slate roof. So the initial scheme, when it was submitted, the apartment building, the 4 dwellings, were located fronting onto Beechwood Park, and the apartment building was located fronting onto the existing area of open space. And when this was initially submitted, 14 objections were received on the initial scheme. So in considering the representations, 18 written representations were received during the processing of the application. 16 were objections and 2 were letters of support. 1 of the objections was then withdrawn. 14 of these objections were received regarding the initial scheme, but following re-notification of the application, only 1 further objection was submitted. In summary, the issues raised in the objections relate to the lack of or no community involvement from the developer, no room for the dwellings, impact on traffic in the area, removal of green space that should be retained, wildlife on the site, and impact on the existing sewage system. Following a meeting with the agent and officers, a revised scheme was then submitted and the application was re-advertised and re-neighbour notified. 5 further letters of support have now been received since this application was recommended to committee for a decision, and the letters of support are included in members' late item packs. So in terms of the late items are in support of the proposal in its current format as presented. Officers would clarify that the TPO trees are being protected in the layout and conditioned that fencing will be erected to protect the trees during construction. If council is made aware that the developer is in breach of any condition, it would then investigate this matter. Green amenity space is communal space for the occupiers of the development. Habitats were assessed under PPS 2 and NED have provided a condition, and any future development will be subject to a separate application. In terms of the consultees, none of the consultees have any objections, and a detailed account of this is set out in officer's report. Again, in terms of planning policy, this is set out in the report. Just to summarise, the proposal complies with the Derry Area Plan 2011. A quality residential environment has been achieved in accordance with PPS 7. A safe access and parking are provided in accordance with PPS 3. The protected trees are protected in the layout. Sewage and drainage has been assessed and considered with both NI Water and DFI Rivers. The proposal complies with PPS 15. There will be no adverse impact on natural heritage interests, and the proposal therefore complies with PPS 2. And officers therefore recommend approval, subject to the conditions in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Members, a couple of people to address the committee. I hope they're online. Gus Hastings, I believe you were with us yesterday. I'm not sure if you're still with us today.
Oh, I'm with you, I think. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Gus. Obviously, you're no stranger to this committee and you hardly need me to tell you how it works. But I will anyway. So you've 5 minutes to address the committee. Now, Gus, there was some confusion that you were objecting, but maybe now you're not. We don't know.
No, I'm still.
If you want to clear that up first, and then I'll give you the 5 minutes.
Well, Chair, I am still objecting, yes.
Right. Okay, Gus, that's fine. Right. Well, as is your right, you've got 5 minutes. So where you go, Gus?
Chair, this development is flowing in the face of environmental madness, to say the least. But the reason I am objecting most is because what happened is there was no prior consultation or no consultation from either the developer or the owner. Now, Chair, I also want to read this letter that was received from the Housing Executive on the 14th of January 2020. I can confirm that the land was transferred, not least to the church, on the 29th of May 1979, and a restrictive covenant in the deed, which restricts the use for dwelling and religious purposes and for normal congregational activities associated therewith. So that's the issue that we have. On the original document, which I have as well, it clearly indicates that it was a dwelling and it was for religious purposes and congregational activity. So, Chair, on the first point, they are definitely not, it has not been followed through. In actual fact, they have done anything but that. The second point I want to make, Chair, is that on the early part of February this year, the developer, without any permission, arrived at Strathroy with lumberjacks and and woodsmen, and started chopping down trees that had nothing wrong with them whatsoever. He had no right to do it either. So you can imagine our faith and Mr. whoever he is, because that's the problem. The problem is the developer and the owner is faithless. On the other points about the roads, Chair, the road leading into that particular area, 2 cars can't pass, and on the left-hand side there is 4 garages in continuous use. It's the only road to our football pitch on our playing fields, and the only road that you have access from the park. It has also become a access road for the new greenway, which will lead from Strathroy into the city. So, Chair, our objections are clear. We believe that it should have been a wildlife sanctuary, and that the trees that were pulled down for the obvious reason that this particular person, and we believe it was a land grab or a money grab, whatever the case may be. So from my perspective, I definitely will not be supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gus. Members, obviously, Gus will understand this. Has anybody got any questions in relation to what you've just heard? Councillor McKinney? Or Gus?
Yes, how are you?
Okay, just a quick one, Mr. Hastings. When the TPO trees under TPO touched when these hatchet men, whatever you call them, came in and chopped the trees down?
Well, they actually they started and those ones when we went out and protested, and when we protested, Mr. McKinney, they stopped doing it. Now that didn't stop them trying to. They removed the trees from the site there, and of course, it has been that way since. Now we requested the planning department. They look at the trees. We requested they look at the trees and put a TPO on them. So they're still there. They will be, and the issue is for us that while they're going to develop them, while they're going to do the development, I can't for the life of me see how they're not going to affect the roots of the trees or the wildlife. And it was a wildlife sanctuary. I mean, my neighbours around me actually ensured that that field wasn't touched. It lay for 35 years, Chair. It lay for 35 years without being touched. And then somebody out of the blue, they're going to parachute in four semi-detached houses and 10 apartments. And Chair, I want to make it clear, as a voluntary community worker for 50 years, that's how long I'm in my community association, 50 years, I am not against social housing. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Gus. Okay, Councillor Jackson has a question for you.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Gus, and it's good to.
How are you, Christopher?
It's good to hear you, and it's good to have you here at the committee. And Gus, I think we're all familiar with the site that we had. This committee had great alarm whenever the views came from the Strathfoyle community that these trees were under threat, and I think there was very swift action taken by this committee. They put a protection order on some of the trees. So I don't think that there's any dispute amongst us here around the need to protect those trees. I suppose, Gus, as somebody who we're all familiar with, who is very passionate about the local community, I just wouldn't mind touching on the need for social housing in the area and the need for, and I suppose, given the significant need that we all know that it's evident right across our city and district, and particularly in Strathfoyle, is there any other pieces of land that the community have identified which could meet the social housing need? Because I know that from areas that I'm a lot more familiar with, the land availability for to meet the growing need of social housing is few and far between. So I would be keen to know if there's any community aspirations for housing to be built on another piece of land. Just on the very first point, Gus, in relation to the restrictive covenant that you mentioned, could you elaborate a bit more? Has there been any discussion with the developer, or has there been any discussion with the landowner around the removal of that restrictive covenant?
Well, Councillor Jackson, what I can't understand is that about 4 years ago, you may well remember, you were on the council at the time, there was a piece of land that we had an application we made for 16 acres above the old fort, which would have been suitable for building social housing, because There is no way that the port and harbour can come any further down, and that land there is going to be available. So there was an application made, but I can't understand why the housing executive didn't insist at that time or support it at that time. Why they're wrong, they shouldn't support a sort of a 10 units now. You know what I mean? So from my perspective, I'm sort of, maybe I'm looking too deep into it. Maybe I'm sort of thinking here, there has been something seriously something wrong in the way this has been handled. Councillor Jackson, what I would say is this here. This is an example of how not to make an application and how not to involve your community in the development of a housing scheme. For me, that is the way.
Gus, I'm trying to manage a meeting here, and I really would appreciate it if you could keep your answers a little bit shorter. We have a significant number of other applications in front of us, so I'm not being rude, but it's my job to try and keep things rolling along. Councillor Jackson asked about the covenant issue.
I had said there was no discussion with us. I don't know anybody they did discuss it with, and that's a fact. That's the only information I have, and that was sent to us on the 14th of January 2020 under the Freedom of Information Act 2000.
Okay, thanks, Gus. Right, yeah, Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. I think the question I was going to ask was actually just asked by Councillor Jackson. Really, the fact is that he brought attention about a restrictive covenant, but obviously my understanding is that maybe the applicant or that can be, maybe mopped up the agent, but I suppose you can apply from my law of still certain right, you can apply to land registry and have that restrictive covenant extinguished. Maybe that was what happened, lands tribunal, but I don't know, it could be the agent, they elaborate on that there, but the other point that he raised was about community consultation, but I see from the pack that there's what the officer is saying is there was no need for any community consultation because of the size of the application, but sometimes that doesn't prevent applicants going to the community as probably a mode of good practice and having discussions with them, but no, of course that's fine. It was like those questions were asked, but they sprung in my mind as well. Thank you for presenting today, this.
Thank you.
Okay, no further question there, Gus. The question had already been asked and already answered. Any other questions, members? Okay, Gus, you can sit tight there. We'll come to a decision, I'm hopefully fairly shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. Thanks. Nice to hear from you, as Councillor Jackson said. Clearly, everybody knows you're no stranger to me. We also have online Councillor Alex Duffy. I hope. Councillor Duffy, are you with us?
I am, Chair, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. I'm not a member of this committee.
That's all right, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Duffy, you don't need to be a member of this committee if you're acting in a different capacity to members of the committee. You've got 5 minutes, and then if people have questions for you, they can put them to you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, John. So, folks, I'm here today to speak on the need for social housing within Strathfoyle. Being a local myself, it is an issue I deal with on a daily basis. Currently, we have 165 people as of yesterday waiting on homes within Strathfoyle, 3 of which are wheelchair users. Recently, I'm dealing with a Polish family who has received a notice to quit. The lady is an amputee, and she's nowhere to go, and she has to actually now move on to a hotel because the housing executive have nowhere to put her. Homes like these, especially the adaptive part of this, would have met her needs, but obviously it's not built yet. Originally, as it was outlined there was 18 units, and there was severe objections from the local community. the plans were revised, now it's 10 units. May that be 18 or 10, it's still going to meet some of the need of that 165. Just regarding the TPOs, I was there the day the diggers and the workmen moved on to remove some of the trees, and I was a part of that campaign to get the TPOs on the trees. So I welcome the fact that council is giving commitment to the protection of those trees and has laid that out within conditions of within the recommendation of approve. And that includes the construction exclusion zone as well, and the fencing around the trees to protect them. But this also protects the roots of the trees as well. As we know, once roots are damaged, then the tree will die. So that is very welcome that the trees are going to be protected. And as I say, I'm here to speak on the need of social housing and also the protection of the trees. So thank you, members. That'll be it from me.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Thanks for coming along. Actually, it was my mistake, and then I remembered after I said it. Protocol doesn't allow for members to actually put questions to elected representatives, but obviously your comments will be noted by the committee. So again, I'm sure you'll want to stick with us, Councillor Duffy. You're welcome to do so. So members, I don't have any more speakers. Does anybody have any questions for officers at this point? Mr. Mooney.
Chair, it's Angela here. Sorry, I can't get on the.
Sorry, Councillor Dobbins, I've called on Councillor Mooney first. I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, just is the officer satisfied that the trees that the orders pertain to are satisfactorily catered for in this application and will be protected?
If they're not, what happens?
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. Yes, the trees that are protected by the tree preservation order, there's an construction exclusion zone around the root protection area. The condition will ensure that the roots of the tree and the trees are protected prior to construction starting on the site. So we're content that the trees are protected.
Thanks, sir. Councillor Dobbins.
Thank you, Chair. The question has been answered. Thank you.
Question's been answered. Thanks, Angela. Have you a question, Councillor? Hang on. Right, just going to do the questions. Anybody any more questions? Okay, no questions. Councillor Jackson.
From a good chair, and I've listened. I've read the report. I've listened to everybody, or everything that has been said, particularly the views from the local community. And I suppose one of the things that jumped out at me, and because I do know Strathfoyle quite well, I do know that there's very limited land available for building housing on. And Gus had answered that question because the piece of land that he referred to is zoned industrial land. We're going through our area plan at the moment, and for the people of Strathfoyle, they have the only area of our potential housing land is land that's zoned for industry. That's completely unacceptable, and these parcels of land are few and far between, and they can go some way to addressing the housing need. So in the absence of any change in their area plan, I am content to propose that we accept officer's recommendation to approve. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Mooney.
I'll second that, Chair.
Right, thank you. Okay, so we've got a proposal from Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Mooney, for us to accept the officer recommendation to approve. So we'll just take it to the vote, Maura.
Okay, Chair. It's item 13, proposal to accept the officer's recommendation. Alderman Alan Breslin, apologies. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Abstain, Maura.
Okay. Alderman Drew Thompson. Alderman Drew Thompson.
He might be away. He said he would have to go after 3.
Okay. Councillor Jason Barr.
4.
Okay. Councillor Raymond Barr. Please, Councillor John Boyle.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
Against, Maura.
Okay. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
For.
Okay. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Or.
Okay. Councillor Dan Kelly.
For.
Thanks. Councillor Patricia Logue.
Or.
Okay. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Okay. Councillor Philip McKinney.
Or.
Okay. And Councillor Sean Mooney. Okay. Yeah.
That was 9-4, 1 against, 1 abstention, members. That's approved. Can I just thank Gus Hastings for coming along and for being so patient and waiting until today, and again also Councillor Alex Duffy as well. So I wish you both good day. We'll move on to our next application, if you don't mind. Our application on our order is application 16 on the agenda, LA 11 2022 0340 /O. And that will be presented by Malachy. Go ahead, Mal.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 16, LA 11 2022 0340 is an outline application for a proposed dwelling 35 metres southeast of number 62 Brocker Road, and the recommendation is to refuse. The site is outlined in red is currently in a irregular shaped portion of a larger field which fronts onto Brocker Road. It's defined by bounded by a post and wire fence on the roadside. There's a laneway to the south edge. In terms of the context of the site, to the north-west of the site, there's a small agricultural shed and a dwelling at number 62. And there's also a small watercourse at number 62. To the southeast, there are dwellings at number 72 and 74 Brocker Road. 72 currently has heavily vegetated with trees and hedging along its northwest boundary, which is just to, as I say, just to the south of the application site. The site is within the rural remainder and is subject to rural planning policy in accordance with the area plan. The attached image, again, just gives you an idea of the context of the location. As I say, you'll see number 62 and the associated agricultural sheds. There's an agricultural laneway along the edge of the site, number 72 in the garden, and the vegetation they referred to previously, and you have number 74 beyond that. The policy context for this plan application is set out in a report. Includes the RDS, the area plan, SPPS, PPS3, PPS21, PPS2, and supplementary planning guidance building on tradition. We've consulted a number of bodies, statutory and non-statutory consultees. No objections have been raised, as noted in your report. We've received a number of representations in the form of letters of support. Again, these are from local properties, and the issues raised in support of the application include that the house will be beneficial in areas that's lost its young population due to lack of housing. It'd be good to see a young family live in the area. The applicant has already improved the landscape in the locality, and again, that the applicant, by living in this area, will help and improve the look and nature of the countryside. In terms of policy consideration, again, I set out a report that the main consideration in this application is in relation to CTY1 and CTY8 in terms of whether the proposed development meets the infill criteria set out in PPS 21. In the general locality in Brocker Road, there's a little in the way of pattern in respect of the length of site frontages in the immediate area. The application site frontage is narrow, the site widens to the rear, but officers are content that a single dwelling could be accommodated at the site. The site is not within a substantial and continuously built-up frontage in the view of officers. It is accepted that the 3 buildings exist in proximity to the gap site. It's considered that the gap does exist, but does not represent a small gap. An officer of the view that provides an important visual break that prevents the build-up and rubbing of the development at present. The existing dwelling number 72 is heavily screened and has limited visibility and approach from the northwest. When viewed from the opposite direction, adjacent to number 72, views of the site are also affected by the trees along this part of Brocker Road. Long-range views are also affected by topography and vegetation on intervening lands. The gap, in conjunction with the boundary vegetation at number 72, provides an important visual break between the buildings at 62 and those at 72 and 74. Therefore, officers believe it is contrary to CTY 8 of PPS 21. A dwelling on the site would significantly increase the visual impact of existing residential development. Would represent the creation of potential urban development at this part of Brocker Road, detrimentally altering the rural character of this location. An indicative block plan shows the footprint of the dwelling set back from Brocker Road, large in line with number 62. The site itself is quite open, and as such, if a property was approved, a ridge height condition restricting the dwelling to single story would be necessary. Standard landscaping conditions would also be necessary. However, in the main, it would comply with CTY 13 of PPS 21. In terms of amenity, there's a number of issues raised through consultations, including the proximity of a site to agricultural sheds and the potential for odour from these sheds. There are no other amenity issues raised in terms of the location of the site and proximity of all our residential properties. The AFI roads are content that AMP2 of PPS 3 is met. The sewage arrangements have been considered by EHD and NI Water, and we're content that it meets policy CTY 16. The natural heritage issues have been content. The watercourse, we've consulted SAS because of the watercourse. There's been no viable pathway to European site identified. The site, we've also considered any impact on the hedgerows and impacts on wildlife, and are content that the proposal complies with PPS 2 requirements. As you'll note from start, there was a number of lit items relating to this application, including supporting statements outlining the agent's arguments in terms of the proposal at a previous meeting with the case officer. There's also the email of the 24th of March written to the applicants being Indigenous to the area. There's the letters of support also that you've been made aware of, and a revised illustrative block plan showing a second dwelling outside the red line of the site has also been submitted by the agent, which you can see the revised illustrative block plan. So the site itself is outlined in red, shown in the cursor here, and this block plan, which wasn't included in the report, shows a potential other property outside the red line. It would have been a garden of number 72, Brocker Road at present. So in conclusion, officer's recommendation is that the proposal is contrary to SPPS and CTY 1 of PPS 21, and it's also contrary to CTY 8 and CTY 14, and that the proposed dwelling does not constitute unfull and would have permitted creating urban development to the road rural character of this area of Brocker Road. So the recommendation of officers is to refuse. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malachy. And members, one further speaker on this, Lee Kennedy, the agent, on behalf of the applicant. Afternoon, Lee.
Hiya, Chair.
Yeah, hear you loud and clear. Lee, obviously you've been on this committee a fair few times, so you know the drill by now. 5 minutes, and then potential questions from the elected reps here. So apologies for the voice, Lee. I'm just about making it here. But whenever you're ready to go, Lee, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'm here today to ask for your support and approval of this planning application. This planning application has been submitted as a gap site under policy CTY8 of PPS 21. The first part of this policy clearly permits the development of a small gap site to accommodate a maximum of 2 dwelling houses within an always substantial and continuously built up frontage. The policy provides a definition of what constitutes a substantial and built up frontage as being a line of 3 or more buildings along a road frontage without development to the rear. The illustrative layout plan provided with this application clearly confirms that this is a substantial and continuously built up frontage. The frontage extends to 265 metres along Braga Road. It contains no fewer than 5 existing buildings, all sharing a common frontage on the Braga Road and all visually linked. These 5 buildings consist of the dwelling number 62, its agricultural outbuildings, the large dwelling at number 72, its outbuildings, and number 74. Therefore, the first part of the policy is met. The second part of the policy requires that the proposed development respects the existing settlement pattern of the area in terms of dwelling size, scale, siding, and plot size. Interestingly, paragraph 11.6 of the professional planner report confirms that the application site respects the settlement pattern of the area. It states, quote, "Through the application site frontage is narrower, the site widens to the rears, and officers are content that a single dwelling could be accommodated without significant incompatibility with surrounding residential development." This paragraph also concludes that, quote, "This is broadly reflective of number 62 and 72 Braga Road." It has been demonstrated there is a substantial and continuously built up frontage at this location, and council officers in the report conclude that the site would be broadly reflective of the settlement pattern of the area. Therefore, I asked, why has it been refused? The reason provided by the council officers, they determine the application site as an important visual break in the landscape. I don't accept this point, especially when the site has a frontage width of only 38 metres. It is visually linked and shares a common frontage with existing buildings at number 62, 72 and 74. In fact, in terms of visual linkage, travelling in either direction along Braga Road, the strong sense of build-up is very evident, as all the existing buildings are abutting the public road on elevated sites and all share a degree of visual linkage. This build-up is further enhanced with a suburban frontage definition of number 72. It contains large brick pillars, stone wall, post and rail fence, curb and gates, all visually linked to the application site and number 62. The sense of build-up will be further enhanced when the applicants actually define the frontage of their land along Braga Road with a post and rail fence, which is an overall distance of 143 metres. To conclude, this application is submitted on behalf of a young family, indigenous to the area. They have a child and have plans to get married very, very shortly. They want to build their forever home in the location where they come from. There are 10 existing family homes along the stretch of Braga Road, and each have shown their support towards this young family remaining in the area. I would ask you to do the same. Thank you for your time, and I'm willing to accept any questions.
Thank you, Lee. So members, again, over to yourselves. If anybody's got any questions for Lee, go ahead. Councillor McKinney.
Lee, thank you for coming along. Yeah, just a couple of questions. First one is where the development, where we want to put this house in. If you were to walk out onto the main Braga Road, how far? Now, I'm only surmising this. It's about 20 metres. Would be to the front entrance of number 72. And then probably another 10 metres up the road into the entrance of number 74. Maybe I've got my distances wrong. Could you verify that? Also, there's a ribbon development further up on the opposite side of the road. Would it be correct in saying that there's 3, maybe 4 brand new houses built there? I wonder, could you just confirm all that for me? Thank you.
Lee.
Yes, thank you, councillor. You're correct in what you're saying. The boundary of our application site is separated from number 72 Brocker Road with a laneway. This laneway is no larger than 10 metres. Then you have the defined suburban frontage of number 72, which has a definition of the large stone built pillars. It's actually got a paved entrance, which makes it very suburban and very built up. And actually, when you're driving in either direction towards the application site, you can actually see that. And that is actually got visual linkage with the application site in itself. And to answer your question, as further you go on up the road, heading away from the application past number 72, yes, there is a number of new built houses on the right hand side.
Thanks, Lee. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Lee, for coming along. Lee, I know I heard you address your opinion in relation to CTY 8 and CTY 14 of PPS 21, but, and apologies if I missed it, but in relation to CTY 1 of PPS 21, is there any overriding reason that this development is essential in a rural location?
Go ahead, Lee.
In terms of CTY 1, it's my opinion, professional opinion, that the application meets CTY 8 and therefore meets that policy criteria and should be approved. In terms of the essential criteria, these are a young couple. They're from this area. They want to remain in the area and they want to build a forever home on their land.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody? Okay, thanks, Lee. You can sit tight. Members, any questions for the officer team? Okay. Right. Well, we have in front of us, members, a recommendation for refusal. And so I'm going to put it back to the floor. Hold on a minute. Right. So, recommendation for refusal, members. I'm going to put it back to the floor. See what it is that you feel you want to do. Councillor Mooney.
Chair, thank you. And I've listened to the officer's presentation and the agent's presentation and the questions asked. And I was looking through the map there, the diagram provided by Mr. Kennedy, the agent, and it sort of clearly shows, for me, the proposed siding of the house or the proposed dwelling. So on that basis, I'm sort of satisfied from what I heard from the agent that I'd be prepared to make a proposition to overturn the officer's recommendation. I've been sort of looking at the Duff judgment here, which I carry now, releasing these unfull applications on CTY 8, and at number 4 it says where the unfull exception is relied upon. Next question is whether there is a substantial and continuously built up frontage. I accept that there is. I accept that from what I see and from the pack and from what I've heard from both the officer and the agent, that on either side of this proposed application site there is at least 6 dwellings I can see that front on to the Brocker Road. Based on that, the judgment here at number 5 says where the planning authority is satisfied there's substantial and continuously built up frontage, which I'm satisfied. Next question is whether there's a small gap site. I look at the proposed gap site now and look at the drawings and look at the plans, and I note that Malachy conceded that a single dwelling could be accommodated, the officer, although he does say it's not small. But in my view, I think this is a modest gap site on that roadside from the drawings I see and from what I've heard from the agent and from the questions asked by my fellow members. So on that basis, number 2, number 2, the refusal reasons, those are my reasons for not accepting the officer's recommendation. And my understanding is under CTY 8, if you accept that, if you accept the proposition CTY 8, that'll cover CTY 1 as well on the basis of that there. So on that basis, that's my proposition.
Chair,
Chair.
Councillor Barr here. I'm happy to second Councillor Mooney's proposal.
Okay, I actually also had a proposer here in the chamber, Councillor Barr, so I'm going to take that proposal and seconded by Councillor McKinney, because obviously you can't see who's got their hands up in here, but I can. So it's proposed by Councillor Mooney and seconded by Councillor McKinney. We don't accept the officer recommendation. And so in light of that, in light of what's been said by Councillor Mooney, I'll ask Maura to take us through the vote.
Item 16, members, and the vote is not to accept the officer's recommendation. Alderman Alan Breslin. Is he still? Apologies. Keith Kerrigan.
Against, Maura.
Alderman Drew Thompson. Councillor Jason Barr.
For.
Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
For Maura.
Councillor Paul Gallagher.
For.
Councillor Christopher Jackson.
For.
Councillor Dan Kelly.
For.
Councillor Patricia Logue.
Or.
Councillor Kieran Maguire. Councillor Philip McKinney.
For.
And Councillor Sean Mooney.
Uh, 10 for, 1 against, members. So again, that is as it is. Okay, members. Members, I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break now, if you don't mind, and then we'll come back 5 to 4, and when we get through the rest of the applications. Okay, thanks. I definitely needed that wee break. Right, next application is 17 on the agenda, LA 11, 2022-0677/O. And Suzanne's going to take us through that one. So Suzanne, whenever you're ready.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Members, this application is Appendix 17 in your packs. It's for the dwelling, garage and creation of a new vehicular access. The site's 40 metres east of land, 90 metres east of 36 Grody Road, Derry, and the recommendation is to refuse. So the location plans on the left submitted with the application shows the site's quite a large site along the Grody Road, and the ortho is just to the right. Again, some road frontage photographs just give you an idea of existing roadside vegetation, the topography. Site layout that was submitted by the agent. You can see that it's the curtilage in the dwelling is indicated in the centre, and proposed visibility displays. This is quite a large site, and the dwelling pretty central being proposed in that. Although this is an outline application, we have no detailed plans. So the policy context is listed in your reports, summarised on the screen. And in terms of the consultation responses, no major issues have been raised by any of the statutory or non-statutory consultees. We have had a number of representations on this application. There have been 7 in total, and the report indicates issues raised, for example, traffic and access to do with a business that the applicant runs, noise, disruption, pollution, precedent, wildlife habitats, concerns about policy CTY 8 doesn't constitute a small gap site, and also reference to policies CTY 1, 13 and 14. At this point, obviously, we have received late information, you'll recall, today from the agent, and those are photos which he's going to address in his presentation. But for this application as a whole, we did receive some supporting information from the agent during the processing of it, and the applicant or the agent felt that it did meet CTY 8, and also was indicating sort of personal circumstances to support the dwelling, that the applicants wanted to build a sort of a multi-generational home to meet the needs of the family. Although there has been no site-specific cases or evidence submitted on behalf, to assess under CTY 6. Members will be aware CTY 6, which is the personal domestic policy in PPS 21, is quite detailed, requires quite specific justification, and some consideration of genuine hardship that would be created. So in terms of CTY 1, 6 and 8, I mean, we feel it's definitely not, clearly not ribbon development, infill development. I'm just trying to pull the map up here for you, just in terms of the context of the site. There's no substantially built up frontage there. The site itself is quite large in terms of the frontage, well in excess of 100 metres, probably even, I think it's even more than that. There's no issue there's no policy justification under any other policy that officers have considered. In terms of integration, officers consider, the large scale proposal, a dwelling in the middle of the field would be contrary to CTY 13. So there's concerns in terms of integration. No other concerns in terms of PPS 3, the access or residential amenity. And DFI Rivers are wanting a 5 metre maintenance strip for a water course along the southern boundary, and that can be conditioned. Again, it's been assessed under PPS 2 in terms of natural heritage concerns, and shared environmental services have considered if there would be any adverse effect on any SAC, and they have concluded not. So in summary then, officers recommend refusal on CTY 1, which is the principal policy, and CTY 13, and that the proposal wouldn't visually integrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Members, we do have a couple of speakers as well who want to address the committee. and Sharon Harkin. Sharon, I hope you're online with us.
I am indeed, yes.
Thank you, Sharon, and I believe you're objecting to the application. So Sharon, the normal one of things here is you've got 5 minutes to address the committee, and then at that point, then I invite members to put any questions that they might have to you. So apologies for my voice, Sharon. I've got a touch of laryngitis, but hopefully you can hear and understand me. So whenever you're ready to go, Sharon, go ahead.
No problem, thank you. Yes, I would be objecting to this. My family live at number 36, which would be the house closest to this land. Our objection is basically the land has always been agricultural land, and I know when it was recently sold to the applicant, the announcements were that it is agriculture use only. The greatest concern is this is a small country road which leads to a dead end. There's not enough room in the road for 2 cars to pass at one. If I need to meet at the road, I would usually have to pull up on a banking to let them pass. And at times when you meet tractors or large vehicles, you literally have to end up reversing up the road to the nearest laneway to let them pass. You know, there's no safe passable areas. So my greatest concern would be that the impact to the area, if there was construction taking place, you know, it's likely the road would be obstructed or closed for large machinery. The road's quite muddy and dangerous for any of the people living up here. So traffic and safety would be a huge concern. Drainage would be one of the areas that also be concerned. This field, there's a constant flow of water comes out of it, which runs across the road into a stream below. And in the winter, it's quite a hazardous area. I know quite a few neighbours have been stuck at several times or maybe hands along there. So it's a ferry road. There's a very tight double bends along the access of that field, which is a great concern. People who have young children up here, you know, do walk the roads very regularly. So it's a concern about safety, about any possible obstructions that would be along here. That would be the basis for objection. And I know that this person does have a bus seasonal out services, and we would be greatly concerned if they then had their vehicles parked to the property or likely extend development to actually house all these vehicles. That would just make it very difficult for anyone living up here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. So just stay with us, Sharon. Members, anybody have any questions? Any questions for Sharon? Sharon, nobody in the chamber here, nobody online, so I can thank you for joining us, Sharon, and just stay where you are. Members, we do also, and thanks for your contribution, Sharon. We do also have the agent online on behalf of the applicant, Mark McIver. I think hopefully you can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you, Chair.
Good stuff, Mark. Okay, Mark, again, similar thing, 5 minutes, and then we'll put questions to you. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. What I'll do is I'll give a short presentation. I'll respectfully present some arguments, in our opinion, which are different to those held by Suzanne and our colleagues at the council. And I'll also try and address some of Sharon's concerns, particularly around safety. So if I can jump straight to the reasons for refusal, of which there's 2. The second reason for refusal I'm going to address first. The proposal before you is for an outline application for a single dwelling, albeit that dwelling is for an extended family. That extended family being the grandparents, the current applicant and his partner, and potentially in future children. So the decision was taken when they were looking at this site. Would they apply for 2 separate dwellings to accommodate the grandparents and themselves? But the decision was taken that they would come forward with a single dwelling. And I just wanted to give that context. And the reason for that is really as a cost saving means. So rather than building two separate properties, you're building one single property, but it has separate wings. So you would have shared living accommodation, shared kitchen facilities, but separate bedrooms and two separate entrances. So it's something that as the cost of living crisis kicks in, we're going to see a lot more of. It probably already happens. It just doesn't have the fancy name, multi-generational homes. I know that I lived with my grandparents for a period. Other people do too. We also have people staying at home a lot longer and not leaving the family home until they're well into their 20s, 30s, and sometimes beyond that. So the concept of multi-generational homes is not unusual or new. With regard to the site itself, I said I would address the second point for refusal, and that's to do with the property not being integrated into the landscape. This is an outline application and all matters have been reserved. So I've shown with some photographs examples of other outline applications that have been granted permission in the council area. And it's showing that these are all in rural locations. One of them is in an outstanding area of natural beauty. And so the time to address the siting, landscaping and integration is at the reserve matter stage. It's not at this early stage. And what we're trying to do is secure the principle of development and not get into detailed matters. So I think that second reason for refusal is premature. If I move on to the first reason for refusal, and again, we would argue that this is an infill development. There is existing ribbon development along this road frontage. There's actually, as Sharon had mentioned, the road comes to an end just past her dwelling, where beyond her dwelling at number 36, there is then a agricultural building and then the road stops. But on the stretch of road itself, there's numbers 30, 32, 34, and 36. They're all residential properties. And there's also several agricultural properties. So I think also if we can look at the number of objections that this application has received, 7 in total, that tells you that this is not an isolated location. There are existing dwellings and buildings along this road frontage, and the opportunity that's been presented is for an infill. So in terms of the site being larger, I've explained that initially the process was the applicant was going to apply for 2 dwellings, but decided that a more efficient use of the land and their finances would be a multi-generational home. There's been some talk around the applicant's business. The applicant has not has wanted to be completely transparent. The applicant operates a business which assists the emergency services. So what they do, they are contracted by a lot of local authorities, councils across Northern Ireland and the Northwest and other businesses. And what they do is that they go out during storms, during bad weather, and they actually assist, whether it's removing trees off roads. They're very much seen as an unofficial emergency service. So the
Excuse
applicant
me,
keeps
sorry.
unused.
Sorry, Mr.
Yeah.
McIver, your 5 minutes of speaking rights is now complete.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Members, has anybody got any questions for Mr. McIver? Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Mr. McIver. I'll tell you what it is, really. The applicant, the business, as you've just spoke about there, that would entail large HGV vehicles driving up and down that road and cranes, etc. Would that be true?
That would not be true, as this is a location for a dwelling home, not a business. So that would not be true, no.
Anybody else? Alderman Kerrigan?
Just following on, thank you, Chair, just following on from Councillor McKinney's point, is there a separate business premises? Because, I mean, majority of men that work at that sort of stuff, removing trees or various bits and pieces there, you know, a lot of those vehicles are parked at their home. Maybe this man does have a separate business address, but just as query.
Absolutely, he does have a separate business address. The separate business address is on the Glen Gallia Road.
Okay, thank you. Mark, anybody else, any questions? Anybody?
Can I just ask, sorry, Sharon
Right,
here,
sorry, Sharon, we've a particular protocol in place. That is that we don't have a cross questions, as you get your chance to speak and then the applicant gets their chance to speak, and that's how we do it. So unfortunately, I can't afford you to come in at this point. Okay.
No
Members.
problem, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Members, any other questions for Mr. McIver? Councillor McKinney?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are you claiming this is possibly an infill site? Because you're talking there's nearly approximately, well, near enough, nearly half a kilometre between 36 and 34.
Yeah, so there's actually, if you take this, the Grotty Road that we're looking at, there's actually 4 residential properties along. So where the site is based, which is in between numbers 32, 34 and 36, it is obviously a more modest sized plot. The original thinking was that it would satisfy 2 dwellings, as is allowed by the planning policy. The applicant decided with their parents that they would explore a multi-generational home. So you insert one, which would be a tight knit collection of buildings, which again, I've shown an example of such in the information I supplied today. There is it's a collection of 3 different buildings, but they're all interlinked, and that's actually a multi-generational home. Just trying to explain the concept. So yes, we do believe that it is a gap site within the ribbon development, albeit the field sizes dictate the sizes of the gaps that are available.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Okay, thanks, Mark. Thanks for answering those questions. Members, any questions for the officer team? Okay, Head of Planning just wants to address a couple of matters. Go ahead, Maura.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, just to highlight, you know, we just need to go back to the policy, and I mean, I do have to say this is what would have been considered the old green belt. I know the area very well, walked up this road many times during my summer holidays. So, I mean, we've got, I mean, it's also just to be mindful, we have an aerial photograph here, but, you know, understanding the character and the rural nature of the area, it's also about how you see it on the ground as well. And the officers are trying to explain that with their reports as well in their presentations. And it's important to remember that when you're making your judgment on these cases. You know, in terms of the terminology of the policy is one thing, but I mean, it's clear, you know, from the map, but also from the photographs, you know, we have to first of all ascertain whether or not there is ribbon development in this location before we decide whether it satisfies as an infill. And also, you know, I mean, the facts speak for themselves, but it's also road frontage. That is part of suburban development. It's road frontage, not dwellings of separate laneways, etc. So it's just reminding members of the facts and each case in its own merits. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maura. So, there weren't any further questions for our officers in relation to this application, members, and clearly you have a recommendation in front of you, as do I. And the recommendation is to refuse the application, so I'll put it back to the floor and to see if we can get a view on this.
Chair, if there's nobody else welcome to speak, I'm content to propose we accept the officer's recommendation.
Proposal, Alderman Kerrigan, to accept the officer recommendation to refuse. Obviously, I will be needing a seconder if others agree with
Here,
that.
I'll Townsville here. I'll second that if nobody else in the room is.
Thank you, Councillor Dobbins. We actually did have a couple that were going to indicate, but you're in first, so we'll take you as a seconder. So, proposal to accept the recommendation to refuse, proposed by Alderman Kerrigan. Second to be Councillor Dobbins, and without further ado, I think we'll move to the vote. Maura.
Thank you, Chair. Alderman Alan Breslin, apologies. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Maura.
Thank you. Alderman Drew Thompson. Apologies. Councillor Jason Barr.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr. Apologies. Councillor John Boyle. 4. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
4, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson. Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly. Councillor Kelly.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Patricia Logue. Thank you. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Thank you. Councillor Philip McKinney.
4.
Thanks. And Councillor Sean Mooney. Thank you. Ten, 4, and 1 against.
Okay, that's 10 for, 1 against. Can I just thank our 2 speakers? So the officer recommendation here was to refuse, and so therefore the committee have accepted that as the way forward for this application. Can I again just thank Sharon Harkin for joining us and also Mark McIver, and I wish you both good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, we'll move on to our next application, which is application number 8 in the pack, LA 11 2022 0814F, and that's the proposed public realm works and installations of an artist sculpture of the Factory Girls, 2 lands that we all know very well because it's right behind this building. So, whoever has their microphone online, could you please turn it off? I thought I was the only one with a cough. Right. Oh, it's actually, I apologise. I thought that was somebody online. It's actually yourself, Councillor McKinney. You sound as bad as I do. Okay. Right. And that was, what did I say, 17. Right. Number 8 is, Suzanne, you're taking us through this. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Thanks, Chair. So members, this is LA 11 2022 0814, and it's proposed public realm works and the installation of the artist sculpture for the Factory Girls on the lands at Harbour Square, just outside the Guildhall here, Custom House Street. So just bring up the location plan. Most of you will be hopefully familiar with that. And then just an satellite overhead of the site. And the site just viewed with the main views along the dual carriageway there as well. In your packs, there is figure 4, which is the existing plan. And then figure 5 is the proposed plan and the dimensions, which is on the screens. So this is obviously the second scheme we've had in terms of the Factory Girls sculpture. And this one here takes the form of of 3 bell-shaped forms up to 3.5 metres in height, in the shape of spools and with thread, and the proposal has nighttime illumination as well. So the artist impressions on your screen. Again, just the elevational details in terms of the scale of it on your screen as well. There's some existing work to be done, or some work to be done to the existing surface, and those plans are detailed in your packs. In terms of the policy context, obviously, area plan, conservation area, PPS2 issues. We've looked obviously at the PPS6, planning, archaeology and built heritage important. In terms of the consultations, no concerns have been raised from any of the consultees. At the time of writing the report, we didn't have a final response from NIEA, and the reason we had to consult them was there was a habitats assessment that was carried out as part of the project, and as the statutory nature conservation body, we require their view. They have since come back, and that's included as lead information in your packs on the 24th of March with standing advice. We've listed there the relevant site history. Obviously, the most recent one approved, or the application was submitted back in 2016. So there's no major concerns with the policy, and no objections, and officers are recommending approval, subject to conditions set out in the report. Yep, sorry, yes, thanks.
Okay, we don't have any speakers on this, members. So if anybody's got any questions to the officers or indeed any comments, I'll invite them now. Go ahead, Councillor Luke.
I've no questions, but
I don't envisage anybody will have any because we've been through this quite a number of times. But we'll leave it open to the floor, and then if nobody has any, I'll come straight back to you, Patricia.
Well, look,
no questions now. Go ahead, Patricia.
Right. Do you want to propose this this application? It's been long awaited, and we have seen the model. I think it's sitting downstairs of what is proposed, and it's hard to believe that we have been through this process in 2016. But hopefully, this one will be in place sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Logue. So obviously a proposal from Councillor Logue. Anybody want to second that? Councillor Jackson, second on that. Okay, members. If there's no further comment, then Councillor Dobbins have moved on, so we've got a seconder. Thanks. So if there's no further comment, members. Okay, right. I'll take Councillor. Thank you. That's very gracious of you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Dobbins is going to be second. This proposed from Councillor Logue, seconded by Councillor Dobbins. Probably two women who are proposing a second. Let's be honest. So, if there's no further comment, then we will put it to the vote. Okay, Maura. You want to speak? Yeah. No. Okay, Maura, go ahead.
Members, this is item 8, and it's a proposal to accept officer's recommendation to approve. Alderman Alan Breslin, apologies. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Alderman Drew Thompson, apologies. Councillor Jason Barr. Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr, apologies. Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
For Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
For Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
For.
Thanks. Councillor Dan Kelly.
For Maura.
Thanks. Councillor Patricia Logue. Thank you. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Thank you. And Councillor Philip McKinney. Thank you. And Councillor Sean Mooney. It's unanimous, Chair.
Right. Well, that's unanimous, as I'm sure nobody's surprised to hear that. And hopefully, as Councillor Logue said, we'll see it in situ, and we'll see the redevelopment of Harbour Square much sooner than later. So again, something very positive, I think, will come forth from this in its own good time. But obviously now that's the planning element of it taken care of. And so thanks for that, members. Next item on the agenda for us to consider is number 9 in the pack, LA 11 2018 0643F. And our officer presenting is Malachy, before I run out of voice.
Thank you, Chair. Item 9 is LA 11 2018 0643. It's a full application. The proposal includes the redevelopment of existing informal footpath with works to include 2 metre wide brickmac footpath, steel steps, including handrails from the road, minor earthworks, 1.8 metre high wire mesh fencing south of the footpath, removal of two trees to accommodate construction of the footpath, pedestrian guardrail on public footpath, and the application is located between the River Faughan and River Bridge of Drumahole Road, and the recommendation is to approve. The application site is just at the bend of the River Faughan, just north of the Drumahole Park and River Bridge, and near the current access to the site is off the wee stone bridge there at Drumahole Road. You see the red arrow pointing to the general location, the bend of the river, and on this sort of faded site location plan, you'll see the red outline of the site and blue lines. This is a council application. Again, the details of the application are set out in this block plan in terms of there's an existing informal footpath. So the proposed new footpath is outlined in the kind of pink shaded area leading into and connecting the Drumahole Road to the Drumahole Park, just between the river and the residential area known as River Bridge. And the photographs will show you the location. The existing informal footpath goes through these trees to the land beyond. And you'll probably see in these photographs that's the kind of the muck path, or the mucky path, I suppose. It goes along the river that's used at the present. They access the park from Drumahole. Here's some details, the proposed steps and fencing as described in the application description. In terms of the policy context, it's detailed in the plan, in the report, the area plan, RDS, SPPS, PPS2, PPS3, PPS8, and PPS15. We've consulted quite a few bodies given the location of the application adjacent to the River Faughan, which you're aware is a SAC. It's also within a floodplain, the site location. So on that basis, we've consulted DFA Roads, Rivers Agency, Locks Agency, the Shared Environmental Services, Water Management Unit, Environmental Health. There's been no objections from any of the bodies subject to conditions, which again are set out in a report. There's been 8 representations in relation to the application. The issues raised have been the removal of the trees, the need for appropriate compensatory landscaping, flooding, the use of bitmac tar and a potential impact from that, access for people with disabilities and small children, potential for antisocial behaviour, noise, nuisance, and the provision of environmental documents to be uploaded on the portal. Each of these issues have been considered in the report. So in terms of policy consideration, in terms of the pathway, we believe that the proposal is in compliance with OS 1 of PPS 8 and policy R1 of the area plan. It will enhance the recreational value and public access of the area and will not have an adverse impact upon the character or setting of the adjacent river in accordance with policy EMV 9 of the area plan. The access steps have also been considered. The development includes improvements to the existing situation from the access to the northwest of the site and to Drumahole Park. They will introduce a steel structure, composite steps with handrails either side. will require the removal of 2 trees and some shrubs. These works were not considered to be substantial to compromise the amenity value of the area. In accordance with EMV6 and EMV7, we've consulted NED and SES, and there is proposed conditions relating to compensatory planting in respect of those loss of those trees and shrubs. There will also be a 1 metre high wide steel gate placed at the entrance of the steps along River Bridge. In terms of the materials to be used in relation to the new footpath, there was objections raised to the use of bitmec and potential damage of this material and the effect of this possibly in terms of pollution to the River Faughan. As a result, the HRA submitted in support of the application was updated, and this was considered and reviewed also by our shared environmental services. So, and they have no reason to disagree with the conclusions of the addendum. So there will be conditions regarding the protection of the river from asphalt lifting or washing, as it's known, into the river. This includes an infiltration trench and a line of native willow to be planted between the path and the river. In terms of residential amenity, there already is an existing footpath used in this area, so it already attracts, people between River Bridge and Drumahoe Road into the park. This is really a formalisation of that use. There are no floodlights proposed with the development. There's a buffer of mature trees between the footpath and the access road to the front of the properties at River Bridge Road. There have been objections to potential noise from antisocial behaviour, which we've made environmental health aware of. However, we do not believe that antisocial behaviour is a material plan consideration in this case. Therefore, in conclusion, officers believe that the proposal complies with SPPS in terms of amenity. We've consulted DFA Rivers in relation to the flooding impact of the proposed development. We, under FLD1, we have to consider whether proposals are an exception. Officers believe that the proposal is an exception under criteria F of FLD1. Flood risk assessment has been submitted in support of the application. Rivers Agency have accepted the findings of the submitted report and do not object to the development, and officers are satisfied that the policy requirements of FLD1 have been met. As said at the outset, the site is adjacent and partly within the River Faughan SAC. An EIA determination has been carried out and has been made publicly available on the application, and a HRA has been submitted in support of the application and shared with Shared Environmental Services. There's been no objections raised by Shared Environmental Service nor from Natural Environment Division with NIEA. There will be a 10-metre buffer zone where construction work will be restricted to ensure there's no pollution to risk to the river. There is a condition requiring the submission of a construction environmental management plan prior to commencement of works, which we will consult all of the relevant bodies with as well. So the outline SEMP that has been submitted is to the satisfaction of the required consultees. So having considered all the relevant planning policy, consultation responses, objections, and all our material considerations, officers recommend approval subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malachy. And as you pointed out as well, of course, it's a council application and pretty much the reason why it's in front of us. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Yes, council application, but there was also more than 5 objections.
Right, okay, good. I did. You read that, but it wasn't 100%. Okay, members, obviously recommendations for approval here. Any further questions for the members or any comment? Go ahead, Councillor McKinney.
Malachy, thanks for delivering that for us. I'm glad about the access for the residents as part of Drumahoe is being looked at into the Drumahoe Park. I have concerns about the bitumen path with regards to the flooding there, and I've actually witnessed the flooding there, and it is very, very high. Is there any, is there any sort of, what I'm looking for, meterage of what height the water would be in line with that bitumen path? And also, it's quite a pretty area as well. Why do we insist on having metal steps put in? Could we not have steps, wooden steps put in made with, say, sleepers or something? You know, to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Appeal better to the area and the environment. And bear in mind, we are cutting down trees as well to do this. Thank you.
Yes, in terms of the location of the footpath, I can't confirm it's within the floodplain, so I don't have the exact, measurements in terms of the floodplain area, but I know it is within the floodplain. Yes, the application that's submitted has proposed the steel metal steps, and that's what we have considered. We believe, given the vegetation and the location within it, that it won't have an adverse impact visually. No, but that's we haven't requested any different materials. No, we believe that those are satisfactory as they are presented to us. No.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, members? Mr. Jackson.
Thanks, Chair. Maggie, just in relation to the reports that have been uploaded to the portal, can we confirm that the HRA report was uploaded? Apologies, I haven't had time to get on and upload it.
Yes, in this application, there's the environmental reports required in relation to this application was a EIA determination, which has been carried out and uploaded. And because it's a council application, as a competent authority, the council is required to produce their own HRA assessment of the application. So that has been uploaded in terms of the report submitted and its addendum, and it's publicly available on the public register.
Any other questions, members? Nope. Okay, not online either. Okay, members, well, obviously in front of us we have a proposal, and the proposal is to approve the recommendation. So I'm going to pass it back to yourselves.
Chair, I'm content the proposal to accept officer's recommendation.
Chair, based on what I have heard, I'm happy to second that proposition. Thank you.
Okay, right. So proposed by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Mooney to accept the officer recommendation for this application, and we'll go through the formality of the vote. Maura.
Thank you, Chair. So this is item 8, proposal to accept officer's recommendation to approve. Alderman Alan Breslin. Apologies. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Maura.
Alderman Drew Thompson. Apologies. Councillor Jason Barr.
Or.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr. Apologies. Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Angela Dobbins. Councillor Dobbins. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
Or.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson. Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Or.
Thank you. Councillor Patricia Logue. Thanks. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Councillor Philip McKinney.
Or.
Thank you. And Councillor Sean Mooney. Thank you.
Unanimous, members. Okay, thank you very much. And on to the next one. It's number 14 in the pack, which is LA 11 2023 1195/F. Sarah's going to take us through that.
Item 14 is LA 11 2023 1195. This is a full application for the erection of 7 dwellings. It's a change of house type at plots 228, 230, 233, 238, 239, 240 and 241 from a house type C1 to a house type C1A, including associated landscaping and site works. The site is in land situated to the north and east of the beaches and northeast of Old School Field, Glenshane Road, Dromahoe, and it's part of the H25 housing zoning in the Derry area plan, and the recommendation by officers is to approve. This application has been presented to committee for a decision as more than 5 objections have been received in the application. So this is the site location plan. The map identifies the location of the 7 plots to which this change of house type application relates to. It's located within the development limits of Derry and is within an existing housing zoning H25 as defined in the Derry Area Plan 2011. The application is part of a wider ongoing development which is under construction and which received reserved matters permission for 241 dwellings under application reference LA 11 2017 0665 RM, and permission was granted by Planning Committee for that application in December 2021. So this is the spatial NI aerial photograph of the site identifying the location of the 7 plots within the zoned H25 housing lands. On the spatial NI aerial photograph, each of the plots is outlined in red and they're located north of the beaches in Dromahoe. Access to the site is from the development which is under construction via main spine road for the zoning, and this can be seen on the right hand side of the aerial photograph. So this is just a photograph of the existing housing at the beaches and a photograph of the application site. And you note from the photograph that there's an existing hedgerow on the boundary with the beaches. And again, another photograph of the application site. So this is the proposed block plan, which identifies the 7 plots which are subject to the change of house type application. So 14 representations were received in the application from properties at the beaches, and this is an existing development located to the south of the application site. The issues raised are summarised as they object to a larger 2-storey house from that which was originally planned as a single-storey bungalow. Dwellings are significantly larger with more bedrooms, more occupants, a higher ridge height and the addition of a garden room. Noise and environmental pollution, overshadowing, loss of light, overlooking, impact on privacy, impact on wildlife, including bats and birds, detrimental social impact, social overcrowding, increased waste, traffic impact, sewage and waste, litter, antisocial behaviour and loss of value to objectors' properties. And there was also an objection in relation to a pedestrian route to the existing development at the beaches from the proposed development. A detailed consideration of objections is set out in officer's report. So this application is for a change of house type to 7 dwellings in the plots identified on the site plan. Each of the previous approved dwellings on these plots were approved as single-storey dwellings on each of the sites. The proposed change of house type is on the same footprint and are of the same building height as the dwellings that were previously approved. The ridge height, scale and massing is as was approved, which is acceptable. The change in design is to accommodate additional bedroom space within a chalet type dwelling, which will be accommodated in an upper roof space conversion. The proposed private rear amenity space is also the same as that which was previously approved in the reserved matters permission, and the back garden depths range from 12 to 17 metres to the common boundary. The site plan submitted indicates that the existing hedge in the southern boundary of the site will also be retained. So this is a typical section through the site which shows the existing and the proposed dwellings. The section shows the proposed dwelling in the context of the existing single-storey dwellings at the beaches, whilst there is a level difference of approximately 4 metres between the existing and proposed dwellings. The separation distance between the existing and proposed properties does range between 23 to 28 metres, which is considered acceptable. The separation distance to the common boundary, the level difference between the properties, retention of the hedgerow on the boundary, a proposed additional screen fence and retaining the same ridge height to that which was approved will ensure that there's no adverse impact on existing residential amenity. So this is just one of the proposed house types for plots 228 and 230. And the proposed dwellings are changed from a 2-bedroom bungalow to a 4-bedroom chalet. Fundamentally, the dimensions of the dwelling proposed has not changed. The ridge height, gable width, footprint will all remain the same as the approved dwelling on the site. The revised house type design includes gable windows and a Velux window on the rear. The Velux window is in the roof, is to provide light to a stairwell and would be considered as permitted development. And the finishes are also as was approved and include render to the walls and a slate roof. And this is just the other proposed house types for sites 233, 238, 239, 240 and 241. And this is the approved house type and floor plans that were approved under the reserved matters permission. So this is just a slide to show you the proposed rear elevation, and that's the elevation that's on the left-hand side of the screen, and the approved rear elevation, which is to the right of the screen. Officers consider that there would be no overlooking, overshadowing, loss of light or impacts to existing residential amenity with this change to the design of the dwellings and to the change on the rear elevation. So in terms of policy assessment, the site is located on zoned housing lands H25, in which reserved matters permission was previously granted on the site. The design changes to the dwellings is considered acceptable. The proposed dwellings will be located on the same footprint, have the same scale, massing and ridge height as that previously approved. The design changes would not cause adverse impact on existing residential amenity at the beaches. In terms of PPS3, DFI roads have no objection, and the road was determined under the reserved matters approval and sufficient parking is provided. So officer's recommendation is to approve subject to the conditions in the report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Members, there's no speakers on this, so we'll just move straight to questions for Sarah or any of the other officer team we have here. If you feel you want to ask any, of course. And in the event that you don't, obviously we have a recommendation for approval in front of us, members. So again, I'll open it up to the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Logie.
Propose that we accept the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Councillor McKinney, you're second on that. Okay, so again, recommendation to approve, proposed by Councillor Logue, seconded by Councillor McKinney. No further questions, no further comments. We will move straight to the vote.
Members, this is item 14, and it's a proposal for a recommendation to accept officers for approval. Alderman Alan Breslin. Apologies. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Abstain, Maura.
Okay. Alderman Drew Thompson. Apologies. Councillor Jason Barr.
Or.
Councillor Raymond Barr. Apologies. Councillor John Boyle.
For.
Okay. Councillor Angela Dobbins. Councillor Dobbins. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
Or.
Okay. Councillor Christopher Jackson. Councillor Jackson's gone. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Or more.
Okay. Councillor Patricia Logue. Okay. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Okay. Councillor Philip McKinney. Okay. Councillor Sean Mooney. Okay. Just one abstention and the rest for it. One abstention and the rest for it.
One abstention and everyone else for, so that again is approved. We're doing very well today, I have to say. We come to the last item for decision. So it's 15 in the pack. LA11 2022 0705 LBC. And Malik, you're going to take us through that one.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Item 15, LA11 2022 0507 as a listed building consent application for the proposed repairs of listed building, including the removal and replacement of existing concrete balcony structure, including steel supports and asphalt waterproof wearing surface, replaced with new reinforced concrete balcony and supporting steels on existing steel columns of watertight membrane and stone paving flags. Careful removal of metal balustrade to balcony and corroded external steel staircases. Replaced to match like for like to match existing. Replacement of existing fibre cement slits with blue-black natural slate. And that's at building 117 at the Errington Barracks, and the recommendation is to approve. The application site is located in the northwest corner of the Errington, former Errington Barracks, and now the Errington redevelopment site. The site is outlined in red. It's a two-storey building, hipped roof building known as the Raleigh Building. It was a former married quarters and was constructed between 1895 and 1904. You should probably be familiar with it if you're going down St. Columns Road there. The existing elevations, there's planning history on the site for all our extensions and improvements which are underway. And this is the bottom image is the elevation facing back into the Ebrington site. And the attached plans, the sort of areas highlighted in red, show where the works are proposed as part of this LBC. So in this case, in this elevation, it's to the roof in terms of the new slits. And in this elevation, again, works to the roof in red, and also to the steel fence and the balcony that exists on that elevation. So, look, as already outlined in a very detailed description, there's a list of work, so I'm not going over all those again there. The policy context is set out before you. The main policy consideration for this will be within the Derry Area Plan BE2 and PPS 6. In terms of extension alterations of a listed building as per PH8. As with all listed building applications, there's a statutory requirement to consult HED. HED have considered the impacts of proposal and are satisfied that the proposal is in compliance with BH8 and are content subject to conditions. And as touched upon, there is previous listed building consent allowed in the site for various works, including demolition of a two-storey rear returns. Officers use that the proposed works are minor in nature and fully satisfy the requirements of BH8, and would recommend that listed building consent is granted in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malachy. And again, members, no speakers in relation to this. So if anybody's got any questions for Malachy or any of the rest of the team. Don't see anybody online either. Okay, members, so again, recommendation here is to grant consent for this. Needs a proposer, Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair. And first of all, I could say that I would be happy to propose a recommendation. The works that are going on in Edmonton at the minute, we can all see the value that they bring to the Edmonton site and the redevelopment of that part of our city centre. This element of this corner of Edmonton is something that leaves me scratching my head at times, because that particular building, I can't understand why it has listed building consent. When you see when you look around Edmonton Square, you can understand the value and the historic fabric that that a lot of those buildings bring. This is one, the red brick building. That's it's very difficult to see the value and when in comparison with some of the other fantastic buildings that we have in Edmonton. But the proposal that's before us doesn't detract at all from the listed building in any way, and I'm content to approve I propose a recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jackson. So we have a proposal from Councillor Jackson. Anybody want to second that? Councillor Mooney? Any comment, Councillor Mooney? No, happy enough. Well, I don't disagree with you in some senses there, Councillor Jackson. It's not the prettiest looking building, but you know, it's an old building, I suppose, and so we do want to try and protect as many of them as we can if they're worthy of protection. And as you know yourself, these things can sometimes be subjective, you know. So I know that it's a former married quarters, and sure, who knows? There could be future married people living in there too, if that's what the plan is. So, so we have the proposal from Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Mooney. I don't see any further questions and any further comments either, members. So again, we'll move that one to the vote.
Chair, that's item 15, proposal to accept officer's recommendation. Alderman Alan Breslin. Apologies. Keith Kerrigan.
Former.
Thank you. Alderman Drew Thompson. Apologies. Councillor Jason Barr.
For.
Councillor Raymond Barr. Apologies. Councillor John Boyle.
Yes, for.
Thank you. Councillor Angela Dobbins. It's gone. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
For more.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
More.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Patricia Logue. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Oh, that's right. That's right. Abstained. Councillor Philip McKinney. Thank you. And Councillor Sean Mooney. Thank you. It's unanimous, Chair.
That's unanimous, members. Okay, thank you very much. Right, members, thanks everybody for sticking with that. And I wasn't entirely sure we would get through all of those in the 2 days allocated, but we have. So, and I think the applicants, no matter what the outcome, at least we got to hear from them and see these applications. Members, the other information is really only open for items 7, 8, 9 and 10. So, Councillor Kelly, go ahead. I think in relation to 7, is it?
It is, Chair. It's a very, thanks, Chair. It's a very minor issue. It's just I appreciate there's a lot of work goes into the preparation of these papers, and I hate raising it, but I just found tracking the applications on the table in item 7 very difficult because the applications are cut across, multiple pages, so you're jumping back and forward. The information is all there. It's just a presentational issue, and I would wonder in future would it be possible to get the table in a manner which is on item 8 on the agenda, where all the individual application is all together on one line. It just makes it a lot easier to read. That's it, Chair. Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair, thanks, Councillor Kelly. Yes, we are aware of that. It's not very accessible. I appreciate that. We're working with member services and hopefully we'll have it's sorted for the next committee. Thank you.
One item, number 9, just, but if you can, yeah. No, just a wee question there in regards to the response from Donegal County Council there. As the only, looking at that map of Donegal, is there only one section which is acceptable in principle? Is that effectively for wind farms there, from my reading of it there, which is touching into our own DEA there, which we can have plenty of wind farms there. Is there anything, or is there any response in regards to that? It's just, it doesn't zoom in as clean, but is there one wee section in there which they're deeming that is acceptable in principle for wind turbines, or maybe I'm just picking that up wrong in regards to it? There's one just in the very, very bottom, which I'm trying to work the lie of the land there. It wouldn't just necessarily be going up Tullycar, but it wouldn't be massive. It probably would be going up Tullycar. What if Councillor Maguire would know better? But again, there's quite a number of wind turbines on our side, so it's just a wee query in that regard. Thank you.
Yeah, Francis is online to take questions on this. So, but in terms of the jurisdiction that they would have in terms of the policy would only relate to Donegal. They can't obviously make a policy outside that section. So it's only whatever's within their powers. So I think Prentice, are you there to answer their? Prentice is just online about the specific area, that particular location.
Yes, Maura, thank you. Yes, Councillor, you're correct. There is.
You need to speak up, Prentice, if you can, please.
Sorry, yes, Councillor, that is correct. There is one small piece which is shaded in grey. The rest of I suppose the parts that are in buff colour are actually open for consideration, and I suppose that's really as positive as they get, in that any applications in those areas would be considered on their merits. So it's I suppose it's in degrees of positivity. Well, the actual grey is, I suppose, like a maybe, I don't know, is it a presumption in favour? I don't know. But it's any of the buff ones would be considered on their merits, and that's actually, I suppose, like an opening up of from what was in the original draft.
No, thank you for that point. I know it's just the case that it would be a very, very sparsely populated area up there, if it is the section up beyond the Lockhouse and on up through Clitter Forest. But it's just the case there's no definitive border, as the man says, in that regard. So it's the cumulative factor then of wind turbines that are up on Clitter and Iron, and I'm not. It's more Councillor Maguire would speak more in that regard. But it's just was touching base with that. There's more of a potential if applications had come in, the Donegal County Council would be more along the lines of approving them, and that again it's up to their own planning decision, but it's just querying that. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman. Okay. So members, the rest of the information there really is just open for information. There are no more comments. All that remains for me to do is say again, thank all of you for your attendance over the last couple of days, but also your attendance over the last 10, 11 months at the Planning Committee. It's certainly been very, very interesting. So just to extend our thanks again on your behalf to our team for their continued work and support of us. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate yourself and your year as Chair of this committee, and on behalf of the Sinn Féin group. And I know we're here as individuals, but on behalf of us as a collective, we want to thank you for your year as Chair. You've conducted the business of the Chair in very trying circumstances. I know it's we're coming back now to a more normal way of working, but it's been a difficult year, and that transition back to normality hasn't been easy. So I want to congratulate yourself in the way that you've conducted in a fair and equitable way, and I want to take this opportunity to thank officers for all their support over the last year, and over I suppose for us that have been on the committee for since its inception. They thank the officers for all their support and guidance throughout the lifetime of this planning committee. So I just wanted to take this and put that on the record. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Christopher. I have Councillor Jason Barr online.
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's just to echo what Councillor Jackson just said, just to congratulate you in your professional way that you've handled all the meetings throughout the past year. And I know your deputy, Councillor Mooney, I know he had very little to do, but when he stepped in, he did an excellent job as well. And also to all the officers and Maura and all their team, look for all they do for us all throughout the year, and making sure that all the reports are drawn up and all the professional way they are. So thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Jason. Councillor McKenna.
Really, again, echo what the two previous speakers just said, but I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank my colleagues on the planning committee. And it's been a very interesting 4 years and a very steep learning curve. Thank you.
And yourself, Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. And just thank you for your the way in which you've chaired the meetings, and just what we come to expect from you, with your time and mayors and all the rest. So very, very much appreciated. And to your vice chair as well, as I say, you didn't make much use of him, but he was always there. Anyway, as a backup, thank all the officers and again for all the work they do. I know there's many times that we're maybe not agreeing with you, but it's not a personal jibe. It's just the way it goes. And on another wee note, it'll be whatever will happen come May time. There's a couple of members that are definitely not coming back again, and we'll miss them from the planning committee. But thank you, Mayor or Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Kerrigan, and I am aware there are a couple of members, at least, who won't be on the planning committee, and can I really particularly thank them for their input over quite a significant number of years as well. Absolutely. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank yourself and the Vice Chair for another year. You've serviced the committee quite a few times and serviced it very well. But as this is my last committee, I want to thank and probably apologise to every officer that I've offended along the way, because rural planning is something really passionate to me, and I know what everything else goes out the window when I'm looking to get something approved. But I really respect everything that the officers do. I know they're bound. It took a long time for me to train myself to know that an officer are bound by these books here, and and they just can't do what I propose to do. But nevertheless, I apologise and I thank you for everything, bit of guidance and help that you've given to me down through the years, and I would like you to pass that on to the team as well. Some of them, Laura's gone, and Malachy, and all the other ones that used to report here as well. So thank you, thanks everyone for all your help, and of course yourself, Jill and Philip as well.
Cheers, Kieran, and fair play to you. I have to say, yeah. Spontaneous rounds of applause for you there, Councillor Maguire. And Councillor Gallagher online.
Likewise, Chair. I feel like it's getting very teary here, but you've done a good job in the chair. And again, to those members who are definitely insisting that they're not coming back, I think that they will be missed. For those of us who will look, scrape and fight and scowl to try and get back next year, well done to those two. And I would just like to say, those members that have come forward that have played I would say not only a valuable input, but also provided a lot of learning to new members that were coming on planning, and I thank them for that. And again, hope to see you all on the other side, officers and all that. Good luck.
Yep, I completely concur. We shall hopefully all see each other on the other side. There will be those who are not joining us again, but again, can I just take the opportunity to wish them all well? And what a way to end with the throat that I have on me today. But with the help of strepsils, I got there. There are other lozenges available, of course, but I've eaten nearly half a packet of these during the course of this meeting this afternoon. So that's it, folks. That's it for another year, as somebody once said. Thank the officer team, and call it a day. Wish everybody well. Thank you.